Welcome to the podcast. I'm Eric Salzman, joined with Kevin Doherty and Rich Bennett. And guys, welcome.
Hello.
Hey,
So
good to see you.
we got a lot of news to cover, and the big one that we're focusing on is the Jerome Powell versus Donald Trump battle that's going on right now. Kind of shockingly, I believe it was late last week, if I remember correctly, or it was early this week, that the Department of Justice has hit Jerome Powell with grand jury subpoenas, and they're opening an investigation into his testimony that he gave with regards to the renovations of the Federal Reserve building, which are now apparently it's over. I think it's like $2.1 billion to renovate, and supposedly they've gone about 600 to $700 million over budget, which sounds like a lot. But I mean, I think Lockheed on a good day with the F-35 does that. So, so yeah, I mean, we had it. The first time, Powell has never really fought back against Trump, and Trump's been hammering him for. I think Trump appointed him in 2018, and he was blasting him in 18, right? Because he was blasting him for not lowering rates, and then he blasted him the 4 years he was out of office, and then he got into office, and he's been hammering him ever since. And it's so odd that he's doing this now because the nomination process was, I believe, starts next month in February, and basically Jerome Powell is out by May 2026 of this year, and a new Fed chairman that would be nominated by the president the Senate Banking Committee confirms that appointee, that nominee. I'm sorry. And the Republicans always have a slight majority right now in the banking committee. So whoever Trump would nominate would get the post. However, the news came out about the DOJ and the subpoenas, which really was announced by Powell, who read a statement and said clearly this has nothing to do with the renovations. This has to do with he's pressuring the Fed to do what he wants to do, and this is the independence of the Fed that's at stake now. And what's interesting is that right after this, the Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina, who's not running for reelection, I believe, which is why he could be as brave as he does. He stood up and said, "No, this is bullshit. You're not doing this, and if you do it, if this isn't cleared up, I'm not voting for whoever you nominate. I'm not voting for them."
He
So
said he said he wouldn't even put up his mom for the position at this point.
yeah. So conceivably, not that he didn't want to do it, but I believe it said he could stay in office till 2028 if there's never a nominee that's put forward. And this guy's basically saying, I'm going to block this, and I'm going to block it for at least the next 2 years. And apparently, behind the scenes, I read this on Axios, but apparently Treasury Secretary Bessent went bananas on this. Like, what are you doing, guy? Like, you were going to get what you wanted in 2 months. And now this is an unbelievable, unforced error by Trump. And now we have, yeah. So I mean that's what's going on. I'm writing an article. I'm trying to, I'm writing an article kind of more like, you remember when we were in the business as youngsters, you barely knew you knew who the chairman of the Federal Reserve was, but did you guys know it? Did you guys know many of the bank presidents or board of governors? Did you guys know any of those guys?
Nah, like the
No.
New York guy, you would know because they were constant voters, right? They always give the New York Fed president a
Yeah.
vote, but everybody else had to rotate, so you didn't really know.
Now, Richie, didn't you have a Bear Stearns story about Wayne? Was it Wayne Angel?
Yes, yes. So,
Please.
so Wayne Angel, right?
He was vice chairman, right?
Yes. So he's like this good old Kansas boy, salt to the earth, grew up on a farm, like everything like America wants and sees, and became successful. And then he gets on the Fed. And what these guys do when they resign or retire, they'll go on the speaking circuit, which is nice and lucrative, right? So they'll go to big Wall Street events with clients, right? And they get paid a handsome sum to come and give their thoughts. So their thoughts can still, they still probably have pals, buddies on the board still, and they talk to them all day. So, these clients pay up to get this information. So if they can get a dinner or a speaking engagement, this is, what they want. So I had this buddy who worked at Greenwich Capital. I think Greenwich Capital was a lot of they would like pave the way for people to leave the actual Wall Street, the actual physical street downtown in Manhattan, and piled out to Connecticut one day. And I remember that the cool thing there was like they never had to wear suits, and this is going back to like the 80s or early 90s, unless there was a client meeting, right? These guys paved the way for casual every day. And they'd play golf and do all this stuff. So they get this big meeting with Wayne Angel and their clients, and they wanted to do it in Connecticut, but they figured, a lot of the clients are in Manhattan. So they did a big dinner, and he spoke afterwards. And he gave like his views on where he thinks rates are going. And this was during, I think, probably around 90, 95, 96, which was tricky times, right? Like in 94, the Fed raised rates a ton. And caused like massive problems in the bond market everywhere, right? And then started immediately in like 95 or 96, lowering, right, in a hurry. So people were on his every word. So my buddy was like a senior guy, and Wayne had some connection in Greenwich or something, or maybe he was speaking at another thing the next day. So when they left the event, my buddy and Wayne rode in the same car service back to Connecticut. So they get in the car, and Wayne is just sitting there with his briefcase or whatever. And my buddy says, "So Wayne, do you really think about this stat and what you just said is going to happen?" Wayne Angel looks at him. They're in the back seat of a car, right? They're not like 10 feet away. Opens his briefcase, pulls out his whatever he's reading, and gives the guy the hand. Like, I just finished speaking for what I got paid for, and I ain't talking to you. And they spoke no words all the way back to Connecticut. I thought, this is fabulous. He was like, he was movie star man as a, 80-year-old retired Fed guy.
Yeah.
Who just got paid probably 50 grand to show up and have rubber chicken.
Now it's probably 200 grand.
Oh, it's probably more than that.
Well, I think, so just keeping with the, kind of the history was when we started, there was no pronouncements. There was no, the FOMC's meeting today, and when it's done, there'll be a statement, and then there'll be a press conference. All of a sudden, I'm writing this in the piece that all of a sudden, Treasury repo rates, short-term rates would either start going up or going down, which meant the Fed was either raising rates and adding or taking out money, or it was lowering rates and putting money into the system. And I said that normally the way you'd find out is the funding guys, the funding desk, would start going bananas, and they were also pissed off because they just probably had a gigantic broker lunch delivered to them, and all of a sudden, their broker lunch was being interrupted. But that's kind of how it was.
And keep in mind too, every firm at that time, I know we did, everybody had what was called a Fed watcher. That was the guy's job or the girl's job. They sat usually next to the Treasury bond traders, and like that was their job. So I don't know what the hell they did, because there wasn't a whole lot of information given out, unless there were those days where you see the repo rate go crazy.
Right.
But anytime there was an announcement, forget it. These guys were on the hoot and holler, like, okay, we think. I was like, I remember sitting there being like, that's a great job. Like that is a fabulous job. And you probably don't even
go to school.
Right.
You got to go to school a lot of years for that, though.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I'm thinking, think about this. They really, Greenspan was the first one to become a rock star, the maestro. But Greenspan, he purposely spoke in riddles, and he basically said, if you understood what I'm saying, what was his quote? He said, if you understood what I'm saying, then I didn't say it properly, or something like that. Something like that. Volcker was a giant physically and figuratively and literally, but he didn't. There were no interviews with Paul Volcker. There was no, he used to go up to the. Remember, he'd go up for the Humphrey Hawkins testimony, every like twice a year, I think, right, where they testify in front of Congress, and he would smoke his cigar and just like basically say, "That's the stupidest question I've ever." Like, I think he actually said that a couple of times. But if you think about it, the Fed really became superstars after they completely and utterly botched the 2000 the great financial crisis. Like, and not only did they, and that's what I wanted to talk to you guys a little about, is like they not just only became rock stars, they gained powers that they never had before because there was really nothing to say that they couldn't do what they did. I'm talking about the quantitative easing, the buying of trillions of dollars of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. And it's like they always say, like, I'm not going to call them a dictatorship, but they always say, oh, if you give somebody power, they're not giving it back, right?
Right.
And to me, that's kind of like that's who the Fed has become, where they're so powerful now that most of the time they overshadow fiscal, what the government does, government spending and stuff. Or you could almost say that, between the quantitative easing and keeping rates way below, artificially low for so long, would the United States, would we have the same kind of deficit situation and debt situation if they had let rates do what they normally do? Because look what happened. Everybody, all of a sudden, crazy theories like modern monetary theory came out, and you have people that think we can just issue as much debt as humanly as much as we want, and we're never going to have to pay the price for it. So I want to open this up to you guys. Like, do we need the Fed, or do we need a watered down Fed, or is it, or are we just right now with what the Fed does?
I think there was probably like that happy medium 30 years ago, or so, where yeah, you're right. The financial crisis definitely amped up their stardom. But Greenspan, remember Greenspan too, when he was around, two things. One, he was a Republican as a political person appointed by a Republican. And in the first State of the Union address that Bill Clinton had, he put Greenspan next to Hillary in the stands, and like that was like the shot around the world. Like first thing, he's talking, then all of a sudden the camera goes to Hillary, and people are like, "Is that Greenspan next to Hillary? What the hell is going on?" And stocks and bonds rallied like crazy the next day, right? Because that's a visual that people can't miss. But he also, he uttered the magical words irrational exuberance, right? Talking about the stock market, like it's basically you people are crazy for buying stocks. The stock market rallied 3 more years after that, right? So like people were kind of like, "Does this guy know what he's doing? Like what's going on?" I
Mhm.
think now though, the genie is out of the bottle, right? So Powell stepped up. If Powell didn't say anything and this thing kind of went on, it might have gone a different way. But I think he's going to have to put up. Trump is going to have to put up somebody that he doesn't know. They keep saying Christopher Wallen, maybe,
Yeah.
who doesn't know Trump from iota, and that's the way I think it's got to go to bring it back into balance. Unless and I don't know how you get rid of a Fed, right?
Mhm.
Like do you just? I mean, Trump could try that, but I think everybody would panic right now. Like who's driving the bus?
So, Kevin, what do you think? Because you
Yeah,
talk a lot about like liquidity is very important in your markets, and what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the answers about what the system should look like, but you raised the fundamental point that they arguably, and I'd say inarguably, screwed up in the 2000s by letting things run too hot and taking their eye off the ball in the mortgage market. And as a result, they just gained more power. And it's the genesis of a lot of the political dysfunction we have today, that you have this overly powerful Fed and they just sticking their thumb on the markets um, and adding to the debt and QE and all of that, and it led to Occupy Wall Street and then the Tea Party, and just both the left and the right just being just well angry about this current system. And but I will say also, this is really the environment that Bitcoin grew up in.
Mm.
And uh, many people view Bitcoin as insurance against a dysfunctional, not just Fed, but overall global monetary system. And as like its role as digital gold, it's an insurance policy against policy failure, both from from central banks and from governments. And so, I don't have the solution. In historically, when we go through these periods of turmoil and institutions fail and new institutions come up to take their place, or are reformed in ways that are hard to imagine beforehand, I just yeah, I see a lot of more dysfunction, and this is it's not like before Trump or before Powell, everything was hunky dory with the
Mhm.
Fed and with economic policy. It's just yeah. Sorry, I wish I had the answer. If I did, I
Well, not
probably wouldn't be on this podcast, though. I'd
I don't
be
know who
exactly.
in the
does.
Caymans
I don't
with
think a lot of people do have an answer for this.
yeah.
Well, like one thing I've always, Richie, when we were doing the blog way back, I remember I wrote a piece about, remember Henry, so Henry Kaufman, Dr. Doom, right? Henry Kaufman was a famous Wall Street economist, and he was a partner at Salomon Brothers back when you were a partner, it meant you had liability. Like, if you blew up, you lost most of your net worth. As they said, so Dr. Kaufman used to walk around the trading floors and the different business areas and stuff, and he'd ask people basically, how are you making your money? What are you doing? And what he was doing was he was trying to his risk antenna was up of, all right, they're making profits. Is it sustainable? Maybe not. Worse, is it something that, yeah, those guys are making $1 million, but they're going to cost us 100 million, a year from now, boy, what they're doing. And that was what Henry Kaufman did. And I always thought that, especially like Richie, you said, the president of the New York Fed, right, which at the time was Tim Geithner, let's say during the early 2000s. I mean, between Greenspan and then Geithner and then later Bernanke, they have they want Jimmy Kane to explain how Bear Stearns and Dick Fuld and Stan O'Neill and all the rest of them, how are you making money, right? Tell me how we start with a subprime borrower with an exploding adjustable rate mortgage with 5 investment properties. How do you take a pool of all those guys and somehow you got 80% AAA? One thing that the New York Fed does is the New York Fed monitors the commercial paper market. They monitor the plumbing. So if you guys remember, I'm sure Richie, you remember because you guys were big in this, was the commercial paper market where commercial paper is supposed to be the pristine. It's very short term and it's from highly rated, companies, a lot of financial companies. Like that's what Lehman and all the rest of them were using, that was their main funding. But what they started doing is they were creating the AAA commercial paper that was backed by this crap. Was backed by. So you'd think that someone would have started asking questions, right? In 2003, 2004, 2000, and they were completely incurious about it, and by the time Bernanke got in, he was incurious too, but the die was already cast. All the bonds were already made, the loans were already made. It was all ready to blow up anyway. But
Well,
I
and you
mean,
had these leaders that were cycling in and out of these powerful positions. And,
mm,
the guys, maybe you're economist PhD, work for 5 years at the Fed. You want to get hired by Goldman Sachs. You want to get hired by all these people. And so the incentives changed. I think
sure.
the amount of money at play changed. There was so much available to be made that if you were a career civil servant at the Fed in the 70s and 80s and had a sense of duty, doesn't seem like that is how it is anymore.
Mm, yes. All right. Kevin, Tell us what's going on in crypto. We look like we finally got a little Bitcoin rally going.
Well, it's been eventful. Last week we talked about how the U.S. Senate was scheduled this week. In the Senate, the Banking Committee and the Agriculture Committee were going to talk about the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act is a super important piece of legislation that was due to basically rewrite the rules around regulating the crypto sector and bring in the the things that crypto does differently than the traditional financial system. And so the traditional rules were hard to apply to crypto and basically create this whole new regulatory regime. And we had talked about this also earlier, a few episodes ago, about how the passage of this Clarity Act could be, and I thought and still think would be, a positive catalyst for the cryptocurrency market. More the non-Bitcoin cryptocurrency market than Bitcoin, because it's really this other stuff that is impacted. Bitcoin's regulatory status is completely clear. It's a commodity. It's regulated by the CFTC. No one disputes that. But everything else, is it regulated by the SEC? Is it regulated by the CFTC? For decentralized finance, are KYC rules applied or not? The Clarity Act is designed to clarify all of this. And the Congress passed their version of the Clarity Act back in June, but the Senate has been taking longer. They were finally due in the Banking Committee and Agriculture Committee to meet yesterday to finalize what they wanted the bill to, how they wanted it to read, and then release it to the full Senate. Well, there were a lot of fireworks because the latest version of the Clarity Act, there were changes made behind the scenes to what they were going to discuss 2 days ago. And there were big, big, big changes to how crypto would be regulated. One of the main ones is that the for stable coins, there was a regulatory act, the Genius Act, to cover stable coins that was passed and signed into law last year. And that forbade stable coins from paying interest as part of their structure, but it opened the door for institutions to pay interest on your stablecoin balances as some sort of reward. So you
Can you
couldn't
explain
have,
that a little? Can you explain that a
yeah,
little?
it's a little tricky. So let's say USDC is the main regulated stablecoin in the US. So USDC, the token, does not pay interest. And it is under the Genius Act, it would not be allowed to pay interest, or you could not create a new stable coin that in it interest is paid. However, if you deposit your USDC in your account on Coinbase, Coinbase can pay you interest on your stablecoin balances, let's say 3.5%. So, like a savings account. And the promise was made that in the overall regulatory framework to be introduced on the Clarity Act, that situation would be allowed to continue, that no inherent interest from the stablecoin, but you could deposit your stablecoin with people and they could pay you interest on that.
Is the bank lobby heavily against that?
Yes, they are. And the latest draft of the bill, suddenly there was a ban on that practice. So you could no longer have USDC, put it in your account at Coinbase and have Coinbase pay you 3.5%, or JP Morgan pay you 3.5%. And this is absolutely, the banking lobby came in and they got to somebody's ear and said, you got to slip this in. And there were a few other things that were slipped in as well that added regulations around KYC requirements for decentralized finance applications that are technically impossible to implement because The whole thing about a decentralized finance protocol is you don't have staff that are doing KYC. You have staff of hundreds or thousands at big banks doing that. You can't do it with DeFi. And everybody thought that these very major topics were agreed by all the players, including the commercial banks. Commercial banks didn't like it, but they appeared to have gone along with it. Not anymore. So the
So,
latest version, yeah,
sorry to interrupt, Kev.
yeah,
So this all sounds pretty bad, right? Like the way you
yes,
lay it out, it's
yeah,
not great news for cryptocurrencies. It's
that's right.
if people were counting on it, right? It looked like a slam dunk, or at least it was going to
Yeah,
happen. But I would say, now that I'm a new holder of an ETF called IBIT that you
uh-huh.
recommended, thank you. Um, it's it's not really devastating in those. It's down a little today,
Yeah,
but it's actually been very good the last few days. There's been a pop on Bitcoin. So is this kind of like priced in, and they think that, hey, we can keep going even if they don't pass this, or it's going to get passed at some point? It's just taking a little longer because
I've been,
it's not like
I've
devastating in the
no,
Bitcoin market at all.
it hasn't been, and that surprised me. I mean, if you had asked me Monday, hey, if the Clarity Act consensus suddenly unravels on
Right.
Wednesday and they postpone the hearing
Oh,
or the markup sessions, what do you think is going to happen in the market? And I think it's less negative for Bitcoin because, as I say,
right.
it's clear what it is. But for everything for Ethereum, I would have said it's going to be down 10% in an instant. And it
Right.
wasn't.
No.
Because so Ethereum is kind of the what's really important for Ethereum is stablecoins and decentralized finance and this other stuff that is due to be clarified. And I'm surprised that this stuff is not down more. And I'm hearing the very prominent people in crypto land, including the CEO of Coinbase. He's the one who really he came out Wednesday night after the latest draft of this of the Clarity Act was revealed, and we saw how these features had been changed. He came out and said, "I cannot support this anymore." He's like, "I don't think this is good. We'd rather have no bill than this bill." And so then the chair of the Senate Banking Committee came out and said, well, okay, we're not going to have the hearing tomorrow. We're postponing it indefinitely. And people in crypto land are saying, well, this is good. They're still going to work on it. And we just need to get back to the consensus that we had before. Maybe, but it seems to me, I mean, politics doesn't work this way. And knowing that the banking industry is clearly behind this, and clearly powerful enough to get this inserted. Remember, to get a bill past the full Senate, you're going to need 60 votes. So you're going to need a bunch of Democrats to come across the aisle and support this. And I think the chances of this passing in the near term have gone down dramatically. But
Hmm.
I'll add one interesting thing. We've talked before about Polymarket. Um, there is a market on Polymarket for will the Clarity Act become law in 2026?
Hmm.
But it's extremely thin. There's yesterday there was only $9,000 in contracts on this passing because they just launched this market about a week ago. And I looked today, it's up to $15,000 in market contracts. But it's showing basically a right now 54% chance of the Clarity Act being signed into law this year. But again, with this thin of a market, I don't think there's any signal in that whatsoever. So we've talked about Polymarket and kind of, the pluses and minuses of it. When you have that thin of a market, I'd say completely ignore it. It's not there's no signal there. And if there were, I mean, as a crypto investor, if I could put size on this, I would absolutely be. We're not betting on Polymarket, are we? We're investing in
Investing,
Polymarket.
right?
You're
I,
predicting.
yeah, this is a clear hedge. I would be buying no in size right now. because it doesn't look good.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah,
Speak,
Kevin, just one last thing about that was now I get. You remember we were talking about the credit union that was the
Yeah.
like is that what that's what they're talking about, right? Is that their custom? So Richie, we had a credit union in a company that I worked for that was complaining that they want a solution. They were complaining about their customers and stable coin, and we weren't really necessarily. We didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know. Kevin knows. And now I see what they were complaining that their customers are like, I want stablecoin and I can take my stablecoin and put it in on Coinbase and make 3.5%. And they were getting a lot of outflows based on that.
right.
And the Credit Union Trade Association came out last week warning about this.
Mhm.
And I think the CEO of Bank of America said yesterday or the day before, said stable coins are a threat to the deposit base of the banking system, and that impacts our ability to do business. It impacts our ability to extend loans. And he said that the stable coins could take up to 30% of the deposit base of the American banking system. And so it's bad. But
Yeah.
yes, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know what you guys are getting from your banks on your savings account, but the interest rates have gone up and they're still paying, 0.01% or point. So, there's the reason there's interest in by people in having stable coins and earning 3.5% from Coinbase is because they're not earning 3.5% on their savings accounts at Citibank and Bank America and others.
Yep.
Good stuff. All
So,
right.
Well, speaking of Polymarket, I had a quick story. The Goldman Sachs has announced, well, their CEO said prediction markets are super interesting. And he has met with the CEO of Polymarket and the CEO of Kalshi. So stay tuned as Goldman Sachs may either buy one of those two or start their own
mm,
prediction market. So those guys, as we know, they don't go into stuff for fun, right?
Mhm.
They know they must see something huge potential wise, right? And that's as we've discussed in the past. This is all like risk free money, right? You just do volume, right? You're not taking a bet as the house. You're matching two buyers and sellers, so yeses and nos, and taking a vig out of that.
So will they be like futures brokers? Like,
Kind of, yeah.
that's what it would be.
I think that's what it would be. So
do
when
they
the
need to buy one of these guys? I mean, can't they just
no,
spin up a unit in house
and
and,
and that's why I'm thinking like these, and they are kids. The Kalshi and the Polymarket guy are not very old, right?
yeah.
So they on paper are billionaires probably, right? At this point.
Mhm.
But you can't outfox the foxes that have been doing this for a long time.
Right.
So I wonder if, all he's probably doing, David Solomon as CEO of Goldman and his sidekicks, they, lay out the spread for these two guys to come in and they
Mhm.
basically brain dump them, right? They learn and then
You are so smart. How did you do
yeah,
this?
you guys are brilliant.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
they figure out in about 6 seconds whether or not it costs them more to buy these cats or for them to set one up. Or better yet, we'll just poach some of your guys. How about that? The guys who already built your shit, and we'll start them in house. So
Yeah.
these kids probably walked away thinking, "Oh man, the Goldman Sachs, we're going to really be billionaires because we're going to sell to them like next week. Maybe not so.
Well, maybe not. Maybe.
Maybe not so. And then there's a new competitor. How about that? How about
So can
that?
you see
Mhm.
like a whole trading floor? Like all of a sudden, like this is just the big, on
It
200 West
sounds like
Street.
it.
You got
Like I get this one. I won't advertise them, but I get this one newsletter every day, and it's like it's a they probably try to be like a more intense Yahoo Finance or something like that. All the news of the day, and you can get this, and they take from all the different news outlets, Bloomberg, Financial Times. They post like the top headlines, but every day on the front page of that thing is some market, either by Kalshi or Polymarket. So I don't think they're sponsoring them, or advertising. Maybe they're both advertising, but there's always a market every day on something. Like today's was vice presidential chances to win 2028 presidency.
Ooh.
On the Republican side, chances to win, and it had like Vance was 52%, but Marco Rubio 17%. So he's gaining.
Little Marco.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Big Dick. Big Dick's picks.
All right. Tough week last week. Kevin.
Yeah, I want to step in a little here.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kevin reminded me of this earlier today.
Yeah, last week. You went 1 for 5.
Yeah,
not great.
Did I pick 6 teams? I can't believe that, but I guess I did.
Yeah. And in introducing your prior weeks 2 for 3, you gave a long, but you gave a cultural reference explanation.
Yes, I did.
2 out of 3 ain't bad by Meatloaf.
Yes.
Classic song from 1977.
Yes.
So I thought we might use another cultural reference to talk about your last week's record from basically the same time period, 1978. I'm going to share my screen here, and you're going to see something here. This is the 1 for 5. Can you see this?
That's young Christopher Walken, isn't it?
Christopher Walken playing a game of Russian roulette.
At the old
odds are about 1 for 5. So on Monday night's game, I was wondering if this is what he looked like. Yeah, heading into that last game.
That's great. All right, now we start anew. Big weekend, right? Divisional playoffs in the NFL. Big game on Monday. College football championship. We're going to go with the NFL. The Hollywood boys of LA happen to be favored in 18-degree, 28-mile-an-hour wind Chicago by 4 points. I'm talking about the Rams versus the Bears. Going back 50 years, 5-0, there have only been 9 games where the home team in this round has received more than 4 or more points. Those 9 teams have covered every time. Put it down with the Bears to make everybody excited. One more week.
This is like, so this cold game with the West Coast boys reminds me of from our youth when the Chargers played in that freezing cold game.
Cincinnati,
right?
Yeah. And the scary part is
Fouts had frost on his beard.
And the scariest part was, like, that's never going to be broken, that record. The week before, they beat the Dolphins in Miami in like a tremendous double overtime game where guys were passing out because of the heat.
Right.
So they went from like, and it was like 87 in Miami, and then they went to like minus 35 in 1 week.
Yep.
Rough.
Crazy.
Kellen Winslow.
That's right. And then we're going to go, I don't know if it's an emotional thing because I'm a Jet guy, but, and I don't like the Pats, but I think they're kind of paper tigers, and they're favored by 3.5 against the Houston Texans, who have won like 10 in a row and have like a crazy defense. And I think it's going to be cold up there too. And the last time they played, I know it's a different year. Derek May is in his second year now, but he was a rookie last year. So he's obviously improved, but they smoked him in New England. Houston beat them like 40-20. And he didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. Like, he was throwing the ball. Now, obviously they've taught him more and he'll be more careful, but I think he's still going to have a tough time. That defense is good. They gave me and Aaron Rodgers a nasty loss last week because I didn't believe, but now I'm a believer. And then finally, Indiana and Miami play in the college football championship here in Miami, South Florida. Home court, home field for the Hurricanes. They say, I didn't know this. This is interesting stuff. Indiana has the largest alumni network in the country. Most people. They claim, because this is such a phenomenon, that Indiana has not been good at football. They claim that there will be more Indiana fans than Miami fans at this game. This is what they're saying, and they're loud, apparently. So I was like, wow. And then I saw a couple other things where the Hoosiers, the guy who wrote Hoosiers, he was an Indiana guy about the legendary basketball. Gene Hackman plays the coach back in the day. They asked him, would he consider writing a book or a story or a movie about this team? And his response was, no, because the true story can't be put any better than any kind of movie. Like, this thing is just so phenomenal. So we were talking before the broadcast today, and a couple of guys have been donating good money to help this team move along, the Indiana Hoosiers. One guy is Mark Cuban. Many of you know him. He gives a lot of money to what they call the NIL fund, which helps pay the players now legally. And then there's also a guy who not too long ago, which he had some kind of vision, John Cougar Mellencamp, the singer, Indiana boy. He put $1.5 million into this team like 2 years ago. And you know what they did for him? They said, John, we're going to build you a shack on top of the stadium, and you can chain smoke all you want. And they did. So he has like this like wooden hut above Indiana Stadium. So I'm guessing he's going to go. Right? I'm guessing Cuban's going to go. This is going to be a big old, and there'll be plenty of celebrities in Miami. And the one thing that tips the scales here, I don't know why people aren't talking about this. I have no idea. I read this one place. Curt Cignetti, the coach of Indiana, before he came to Indiana, was the coach at James Madison, and they did very well. He had a defensive coordinator at James Madison. That guy didn't follow him to Indiana. You want to guess where he went?
Miami.
Of Miami. And I always love those angles because he knows secrets. He knows he practiced against that offense, at James Madison, putting his defensive players against them. He'll do it again. The point spread is 8.5. Indiana's favored by 8.5. I don't think there's many people. I mean, people down in Miami are betting Miami for their heart, through their hearts. But I don't think a lot of the wise guys or whatever are betting against Indiana just based on how they've done. I think they keep it close. I don't know if Miami can win, but 8.5 sounds a lot to me. Sounds like a lot to me. We'll take Miami.
So what do we got? Summarize, Richard.
So we got the cold Bears winning in 18-degree weather, getting 4 points. We got the hot shot Texans, who play great defense, getting 3.5 up in New England. And we have the Canes, the U, plus 8.5 at home against Indiana.
So 3 takes.
3 takes.
That's what Wolf would say.
Well, and you said last week that if it was, but not last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, before the semifinals, that you had seen people claiming that if the championship game was Indiana versus Miami, that this would set records for the cost of the tickets because of all the, and it has. Saw the ticket prices are insane. And you said it'd be more expensive than the Super Bowl, and it looks like that's actually
unless the only thing I could see is maybe like San Francisco at home because they host the Super Bowl this year. Maybe
against Houston.
Maybe
you'd have all those people who've never been.
Right. Maybe, but I doubt it. I mean, I think, this is going to be it. It's just amazing. Like, I guess they're going to, people are paying $10,000, $12,000, $14,000, $15,000 to go to this game. I hope it's a good game.
and their team wins. All right, guys. Great stuff. And we will see you all again next week.
Awesome.
Enjoy the games. Let's have
enjoy the markets.
Yeah.